these questions. Okay, so we are now recording. I want to open up today and ask if there are any questions on the assignment, anything that's coming up.
I have a question.
Sure, go ahead, Erica.
Saying week 4 is like, I mean not week 4, my bad. The group project.
Mm-hmm.
Can you like explain exactly what we have to do?
For this week?
Yeah, with our partners.
So with your groups, what you're going to be doing is just answering those questions on the Dropbox assignment, what it says on there. So answer those questions. How is your group going to meet? Maybe it's by Zoom, maybe it's through FaceTime or whatever. However you want to. Some students just they're okay meeting via email, doing everything through email. However your group is going to be best able to do that is up to you. So just explain that. You're also going to talk about any obstacles. Like I was talking to a couple students last class, and they were telling me about how they're working 45 hours a week. They've got 5 or 6 classes, and on top of it have 2 or 3 kids running around the house. So as you can imagine, not a lot of time for them to really break away for an hour or two and talk about things. So if you have anybody in those groups, how are you going to overcome those obstacles? Every one of you, I'm guessing everybody in this room is very, very busy. They've got active lives, even though we're social distancing and not doing much outside and with big groups, we're still probably all very active. So how are you going to overcome those things? What are some research strategies that you're going to use? I showed you one of them, going into the Kemp library and searching out those files, searching out those peer-reviewed articles. You can use your textbook as one of them if you want, but you're not going to get a whole lot from that. And that's only one source. So for this big project, I think I'm just asking for about 3 or 4 maybe this week. But for your final project, you're going to have at least 8. Some of them I see, 12, 13, 14, maybe, a little more resources that they're using to put together their projects. Okay. So just kind of talk about how you're going to do this and just plan ahead. Who's going to have what role? Do you have somebody in your group that is really good at presenting, that you're going to task them with presenting the whole thing, or is your group going to present together? Whatever. This is just strategizing. So whatever you come up with as far as your strategy for getting this project done, that's what you're going to do. That's what you're going to put into this paper. Okay, for this week.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
So for the assignment where we have to record our dreams and stuff, what if we don't dream?
Okay. And we're going to talk about that here also. What do you mean by don't dream? That you don't remember having dreams, or you do dream and you just don't know what they are?
I don't think I dream. Like, I don't remember. Like, when I wake up, I don't remember that I dreamed anything. Okay.
And that may be the case. I do have a lot of students, believe it or not, in my last class, at least nobody spoke up and told me. Everybody said they dreamed, or if they didn't remember the dream, they knew that they had dreamed, they just didn't know what the content of it was. That's okay. If you don't, and I think there are directions in there, just talk about your overall sleep hygiene. Do you wake up refreshed? Are you getting, according to pop science or whatever, are we getting exactly 8 hours of sleep? And we're going to talk about what's a healthy amount of sleep based on age and everything here in a little bit. But yeah, how are you? What are your sleeping patterns, and are they good? And I'm only looking for maybe a snapshot of about 3 days. If you don't have an entire week, that's fine. But try and at least get 3 days worth between now and Sunday. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions?
I got one.
Go ahead.
The journal thing, you gotta have a journal and the essay, or either one, or just the essay?
Well, you're going to keep the journal. You don't necessarily have to turn in the journal, but if you want to, that's encouraged. But yeah, you're going to have to do an essay, just a little 1 to 2 page write-up as to what your insights were, either to your dream that you have, or if you didn't have any dreams, what insights do you have as to your sleeping patterns? And that's based on what we're going to talk about today a little bit. Okay.
So the journal is not anything we have to turn in.
I don't believe so. Let me look at the directions and see what I had put in there. I think I made that optional, but we are week 4 assessments. Oh, no, yeah. Sleep. So yeah, submit your sleep journal and sleep essay. Okay.
All right.
Yep. So it's both of those. So 2 files you should have. Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, I don't know if it's just my screen, but if I go in the Dropbox, it skips over assignment number 3. Maybe you've mentioned that before, but it just goes.
Assignment number 3 was done in a discussion forum because we were reviewing other students' work in there.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Yep. Anything else? Okay. All right. So yeah, while we're talking about sleep, how did everybody sleep, by the way? Everybody getting a little bit more sleep than the first or second week?
Didn't dream.
Getting dreams? No dreams. Okay. All right.
I dream almost every night.
I just fall asleep and I wake up.
Yeah. I frequently have dreams. And of course, I did a lot of research and some reading into the interpretation of dreams, a book written almost a century ago by Sigmund Freud, and a very fascinating read. You know, you're going to hear a lot about the theories of Freud, and you know, a lot of what he came up with and proposed has been really shifted by the wayside because we have more advanced technology, but he really contributed a lot to what psychology is and psychiatry is as a science today because of him. And he's developed some theories and really put them into analogies or similes that really make sense to us and how we understand the mind and personalities and even sleeps and our sleep patterns and dreams, which I'll talk about here shortly. So anyway, so when it comes to sleep, this lesson is titled, it's called Consciousness, right? So what is consciousness? I'm going to share my screen with you. Who's got a definition of consciousness? Maybe something you picked up from the book or whatever. What is consciousness?
The ability to reflect.
Awareness, maybe.
Awareness, reflect. Okay, reflect. How about alertness? Now, when I say alertness, we can either have decreased alertness or increased alertness, right? So the definition that we have is the awareness of everything that's going on inside and outside of you, okay? Inside and outside, that's very important to understand with consciousness, because sometimes we're aware of our thoughts. Sometimes we're able to guide our thoughts. Other times, not so much, right? How many of you have found yourself one day trying to focus on one thing and you're thinking about something completely different and you can't get it out of your head, right? So that's consciousness. Or maybe you're not aware of what's going on outside your body, like when you're sleeping, or maybe when you're in this total state of relaxation, you might doze off a little bit. That's an altered state. Okay, so when we look at consciousness, we look at the level of alertness and awareness of things that are going on around you or inside of you. So I always liken so what did I say? So we have 2 states of consciousness. We have waking or alert versus altered state. Altered state. Now, what's an altered state of consciousness? What do we know as an altered state of consciousness? What can cause an altered state of consciousness?
Like when you get high or drunk.
Okay, so substances, right? Either controlled or uncontrolled, prescribed, unprescribed substances can cause an altered state of consciousness. Absolutely. What else?
Distractions.
What
Sleep
Injuries.
paralysis.
injuries? I heard injuries and what was the other one?
Distractions.
Disruption?
Yeah.
Disruption in what? You mean like somebody disrupting you? Like if you're focused on something and something gets your attention elsewhere?
Yeah. Change of focus. Yes.
Okay, maybe. Yeah, yeah. That's not out of the question here. I can see why you would say that. Absolutely. Mhm.
Stress causing it?
Emotions.
Stress and
I
emotions.
think of
Okay.
emotions probably like fear.
Okay. So maybe an altered state, like if we get really, really panicky, and we're not getting enough oxygen to our brain, right? That might cause an altered state. We might hyperventilate. Absolutely. Okay. So waking, obviously, that's when we're aware of what's going on around us. What's going on? Okay. So absolutely, we have. So these are really. So altered state means we're not necessarily in control, or we don't. We're not aware or in control of what's happening around us or within us. So I always use the analogy, and maybe many of you can relate to this. If you watch CNN or if you watch Fox News or MSNBC or any of them, or even the morning show, what you tend to have is up on the big screen, you have the anchor, you have them up there talking to you, presenting you information. They might have some graphics going on to the right or left of them or behind them. But that's where your focus is, right? You're aware of what they're talking about and what they're doing and what they're presenting to you. And at the bottom of the screen, going across the bottom of the screen, what do you have? Does anybody know?
Like headlines and like little bits and bobs about upcoming stories.
Yeah, you got that constant stream of news ticker, or maybe it's a stock exchange or something, or maybe it's the weather. But they had that constant stream going on at the bottom. And sometimes you look down there, but most of the time our focus is where? Up on the screen with the anchor, right? Because that's what we're looking at. So I always look at our awake and our alertness as to what's going on in the big screen, and our altered state or our subconscious is what's going on beneath it. Okay. So that you can use that analogy when you kind of think about, we're going to use this again, especially when we talk about mindfulness and thoughts and motivations. This analogy will likely come up again. All right. So when we sleep, let's talk about sleep, because that's probably our most familiar state of altered state of consciousness, isn't it? So sleep, we spend about a third of our lives doing it, but yet we aren't aware of all the science behind it, which is kind of ironic. We do know a lot about it. We know kind of what it does, but so what are some reasons you think that we need sleep?
Heal the body.
Heal the body. Okay. Yep, absolutely. So healing body. What else?
It's almost kind of like a reboot.
Okay. Reboot for what? Your body or your mind?
Mainly your
Both.
body.
Okay, body and the mind too,
It's
right?
both.
Probably both. Yeah.
Absolutely. It is for both. All right. Any other reasons you think we sleep?
We don't go crazy.
Okay. All right. To help with mental processing. Oh, mental processing.
To regain energy.
Energy, right. Regain energy, right? Kind of reboot your mind. I think that sums that up, right? So we'll stick with that. All right. So all good reasons that we get sleep, and that kind of aligns with what we know biologically why we do that. Now, interestingly enough, we are not nocturnal. What does that mean? Nocturnal means that we thrive at night. And we know that that's not the case with us. We don't thrive at night because our bodies aren't equipped to function at night. If you remember last week, we talked about sensation and perception. With sensation, we're looking through our eyes, we're taking in the light and we're taking in the environment around us, and it's projecting on our retinas. Now, on our retinas, we know that we have cones. We know that we see colors better than most other creatures on the planet, okay? We're very attuned to color. We're very sensitive to colors. What we don't have are a lot of rods, which is responsible for black and white, for our night vision, our low level light night vision. So we know that we're not really equipped to function at night, okay? Our smell, our olfactory senses aren't quite what they used to be back in the days of caveman, right? We don't rely on that for survival. Our hearing, while it's good, is not necessarily good enough to negotiate or navigate around a wooded area without probably stepping on something and breaking our leg. So we know that we were designed more to sleep at night, okay? So where do we, how do we sleep? How does that occur? A couple of terms I want you to be familiar with. The first one is circadian cycle or rhythm. Cycle or rhythm, okay? Either one is fine. So your circadian rhythm is your body's internal clock, 24-hour clock or about, that tries to fall asleep every time, at the same time every day. It tries to. It doesn't always succeed. As many of you know, you're very busy doing different things. So it's our 24-hour clock, and it picks up on certain cues. And based on those cues, it activates. And if you remember this from 2 lessons ago, and I think it was chapter 2. Does anybody want to tell me what area of your brain is responsible for sleep? Does anybody remember? Begins with an H.
Hippocampus.
Close.
Hypothalamus.
Hypothalamus. Very good. Thank you for that. I should start doing extra credit for who gets these pop quizzes correct, right? Yeah, your hypothalamus. So when your hypothalamus is activated, it activates your endocrine system, your glands, okay, which release chemicals throughout your body to slow your heart rate down, to raise your temperature, to decrease digestion, to kind of fluctuate and regulate the amount of oxygen that's going to your head, going to your brain. So all these things happen because of your hypothalamus. The other thing it does is it activates your GABA system. If you remember when we talked about neurotransmitters, your GABA is responsible for paralyzing your body. So it starts releasing these chemicals, which deactivates at the base of your spine the rest of your body from ever moving around. Now, sometimes that is not a functional system, and we wind up with sleepwalking and sleep eating and different forms of what we call somnambulism, which well, I'll talk about on Friday. But for the most part, we are deactivated, with the exception of our eyes, weirdly enough. And that's where we get the term rapid eye movement, which I'll talk about in just a minute, okay? So your hypothalamus is responsible for all these systems to start slowing down, okay? So let's go through, let's talk about sleep. So I brought this chart up here just to kind of give you an estimate. So how many hours of sleep do you think that we need a day?
8 to 10.
8 to 10, okay. You know, I think it varies. I think it varies on who's heard something different.
I think it varies depending on like your age.
Okay, it depends on your age, and that's kind of what this chart here shows you too. I'll tell you, I hear it all the time. I hear anywhere from at least 6, no less than 6. I hear no more than 9. I hear no more than 10. You know, I think the general, I think that's where we get 8 hours of sleep, because I think in general, if you average them together, with all the experts' opinions, it's around 8 hours of sleep. And if you look, because many of us are probably, well, I'm a little higher in this range here, and sadly enough, my sleep is probably less than that, so that's not good. But for many of you, you're probably in this 8-hour range, right? So according to this theory, you're wanting about 8 to 9 hours of sleep a day. All right. Now, newborns, if you look here along this axis here, they're almost 17 hours a day for sleep. Now they're getting about 9 hours of REM sleep. And I'll explain why in just a minute here. But as you can see, I don't know if this is showing up too well for you, but as we get older, we require less REM sleep. So if you think of REM sleep in terms of where our mind is most active and our body is paralyzed, okay? What does that tell you? What does REM sleep do for our minds? What do you think?
Isn't REM sleep isn't that when you start dreaming?
REM sleep is when your mind is most activated, right? And we know this because if we measured our cerebral cortex while we sleep through an EEG, an electroencephalograph, we would see certain waves off here to the right, okay? So beta waves, these are our normal waves. And as you can see, they're very short. Let's see if I can get so they're very short. They're all over the place, but for the most part, they're not really high in amplitude, okay? Beta waves occur while we are awake, all right? When we start relaxing, and maybe we're starting to yawn a little bit, feel a little fatigued, our mind is drifting off. Many of you, if you're daydreamers and your eyes get heavy during class or during a movie or something, we'll start seeing the introduction of alpha waves, which is right here, okay? So alpha waves are higher in amplitude. They're a little bit more steady throughout. And these alpha waves really indicate to us that we're relaxed, that GABA is being starting to be activated throughout our body, and the slowing down process has begun, okay? When we get to our first stage of sleep, which we know as N1, now N1 is right in between, and maybe you can relate to this. Say last night you laid down in bed or sat in your favorite chair or whatever, and you started to just doze off. That period of relaxation, like if somebody entered the room or if a loud commercial came onto the television, you would probably wake up, right? That's because you haven't really gone into a very deep sleep. You've just kind of gone into this relaxation. And we can see that through theta waves, which are really a mix of beta waves and alpha waves. And you can see that here. All right, you can kind of see how some of them represent what we see in beta waves. And then you see these amplitudes here where alpha waves. So we're right in between this alertness and relaxation stage, okay? So what happens is the mind, we're just gonna call this relaxed because that's what it is. We're in a relaxed state, okay? So moving on, we get a little bit more sleep we start developing what are called sleep spindles. Okay, so sleep spindles are the activation of your hypothalamus throughout your body. So now we're going to see more relaxed. We're going to see our heart rate is going to decrease. We're going to see our temperature probably rise a little bit. We're going to see deeper breathing. And as you can see, again, these are bursts of theta waves, beta waves, and alpha waves throughout. And it's just very sporadic. So that indicates that we're in by the way, N means non-REM. And I'll talk about what REM sleep is in just a minute, okay? And then we go into our deepest sleep. And 3, which is our deep sleep. Okay. Now at this level, delta waves. I don't know, doesn't really, okay. Doesn't really call them delta waves, but we're going to see more delta waves. Now, delta waves, again, it's going to start activating certain areas of our body. One of the most notable areas that's released are growth hormones. It's very hard to wake up during these moments, but our growth hormones, somebody had talked about where our body heals. This is necessary for our body to heal when those growth hormones, they super activate the cells in our body, and our biggest growth occurs during N3 sleep. So why is that important then for children? Do you think that they need long periods of deep non-REM sleep?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for development.
That's right, development, because they're growing at exponential rates. Their brains are growing, their muscles are growing, their skeleton is growing, their organs are growing. So all this happens thanks to increased hormones, growth hormones within their body. All right. So REM sleep. Now, what do we notice with REM sleep? So when we look at REM, stage R, which is right here, REM, we're seeing some pretty fascinating things going on with our EEG here. Okay, we're seeing these spikes, and we're seeing these troughs, and then we're seeing what looks like between these stages, looks similar to what we're seeing up in alert and awake, aren't we? And, or maybe even a relax and awake, kind of a mix. But either way, we're seeing brain activity similar to what somebody would be when they're awake. Now, what's also released, again, your body's paralyzed, so they're not able to move, but we'll see movement in their eyes. That's how we know that that a person is in REM sleep, along with, if we didn't have any EEG, and if you ever watch somebody that they're laying there and their eyes are moving around a lot, that's an indication of REM sleep. Okay. All right. So those are really the stages of sleep. I'm trying to think if I left anything out. Does anybody have anything to add or any questions before we move on to dreams? What time do we got here? Oh, it's only 2:30. Okay. All right. All right. So dreams, what are they? Why do we have them? There are a lot of theories as to why we dream. I can share with you some of the ones that I have found to be a little bit more consistent. Of course, I'm not, I wouldn't consider myself a Freudian, but I do understand the subconscious, right? So I think I told you I was going to share this with you. So according to Freud, we have a very small part, if you want to imagine this as an iceberg, okay? Now, maybe some of you have seen this before, but bear with me. So we have an iceberg, which is just kind of a tip on the surface. We see it, but beneath that iceberg, that visible iceberg, is this massive body below the water, right? It's kind of science here. So what he did is he used the surface as our consciousness. So this is our level of alert and not alert. Now, what did he mean by that? So above the surface, we know what we're thinking, we know what we're doing, we have we got things figured out. We're doing our jobs, we're doing our studies. Everything is great because we are in control. Okay. However, below the surface are things that are going on. So let's use an example. Maybe today, or maybe not today, but at some point, maybe you were out on the road driving and somebody cut you off, right? What happens when people cut you off? Do you kind of feel good about that? Does anybody say, yeah, somebody cut me off today? What are your feelings when somebody cuts you off?
It's annoying.
I want to curse him out.
You want to curse him out? You get angry. You get mad.
Yeah, you gotta get him back.
You got to get him back. Okay, revenge. That's right. I love revenge. I love talking about revenge because we really hold on to revenge, don't we? So absolutely. So what happens is an event happens here. Oops, didn't mean to erase. An event occurs and we're aware of it. We're aware of it at our surface level. But what's also happening is we are now activated within our subsurface level. So what might come up, and somebody mentioned revenge, right? So we're going to feel like we want to get back at that person. We're feeling mad. We're feeling betrayed. We're feeling all these things on this subsurface level. And we may not even be aware of that, okay? And many of you can relate to that. Maybe you got to your work or your place or your destination and realize, hey, I'm still worked up. I'm still really upset with that, okay? And those things tend to occur at this sub level, and we may see it occasionally here unless something activates us again. So let's say somebody cut us off on our way to work, and we get to work, and our coworker maybe they call us a name or something. Okay, so what we're going to do, according to Freud, is we're going to tap into this rage and this anger and this hurt and betrayal and whatever, and we're probably going to react on the surface a little bit more intensely than we would have had this event not occurred. Okay, so am I making sense? I know I'm kind of getting ahead of myself because we're talking about defense mechanisms and personality, but this really ties in with our theory of dreams too. So with respect to dreams, again, we're awake, we see what's going on here, but when we sleep, we tend to tap in to the subconscious, right? Because it's active. We're not aware of it. It's kind of like that news ticker that's going along the bottom of the screen. And we start activating our mind to respond to what's going on here when we sleep. And Freud really described that well in his interpretations of dreams, which we might have a little bit of time to talk about today. So anyway, that's one of the theories, is that what happens here during the day, when we sleep, it activates areas on the subsurface and creates content, either manifested content or, it creates latent content, not manifested content, okay? So one of the theories as to why we dream is called activation synthesis, okay? And what that states is that, say, let's use another example. Let's say we were on the road and we saw a deer get hit on the highway, okay? Has anybody ever seen that before?
I haven't seen a deer get hit, but I have seen already hit deer.
Okay, so you've seen them out there, all right? It's a very frightening and activating thing. I've seen it happen, but I can tell you what comes up for me is a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety, a lot of worry, because that could have been me that hit the deer. Luckily, I haven't hit the deer. But when you see that thing, it activates self-defense mechanisms, our sympathetic nervous system in our brain. It activates us. It creates a heightened sense of alertness, right? So that all occurs in the lower levels of our brain here. Let me use a different color. Lower levels of our brain are activated. Now, according to the activation synthesis theory, when that happens and we go to sleep, we do know, based on EEGs, that our cerebral cortex, our outer brain, shuts down. All right, so we're not really processing anything anymore. We're just shutting down, and what's occurring in the lower brain region is still activated. We know this. So when we go into REM sleep, we also know that our cerebral cortex activates again. It's once again moving around. It's trying to process information. So according to this theory, is similar to being awake. We're no longer moving around the room. We're not doing anything, but we are still activated, and our mind is trying to make sense of that. in order to do that, because it's trying to store everything into long-term memory, take your daily's experience and put them into long-term memory, which explains why we might have something that happens that's fearful during the day, or even something that we are happy about during the day. We might have a dream later that night. Okay, so does that make sense? Are you still with me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. All right. So the last thing that I want to cover before, so when you're doing your assignments, consider what has happened that day. All right. Because when we dream in terms of symbols, and emotions. Language is oftentimes part of it, right? But for the most part, it's not a one-for-one. What somebody says isn't necessarily what we're thinking in our dreams, okay? The people that are in our dreams aren't necessarily people that we either have wish fulfillment or are fearful of. They might be representative of something. For example, somebody that dreams of lions or sharks or something might have a fear of something that's going to ruin them or harm them, maybe not physically, but career-wise in their lives, and it's manifesting as a shark. So with that, what we look at is content, and that could be either manifested or latent. Oh, latent, that's right. All right. So when we think of manifest, and you're journaling your dreams this week, what were the dreams? What were they about? Not what did they mean. What were they about? So for example, one of the most popular ones, maybe some of you can relate to this, is an image of looking in the mirror and losing teeth. Okay, very popular one. Or maybe you're running really fast and flying. Okay, how many of you have had that one before? Or maybe you're standing on a cliff and falling. Maybe you hit the ground, maybe you don't hit the ground, and you wake up before you hit the ground, or you wake up while you're falling. So try and think of what was happening, what was exactly occurring, who was in that dream, and then think back on your day. You know, what did that mean for your day? So for example, losing teeth. According to Freud, losing teeth is a sign of judgment. And that could be either work related, that could be maybe you're worried about what somebody is judging you for, but you're overall worried about your appearance. So that's symbolic, okay? So the manifest is what you're actually dreaming, and the latency, the latent content, is what it could possibly mean. And you may not know that, but just do your best to try and interpret whatever your dreams mean. Based on what happened that day, okay? And it's usually, it may not even be an action. It may just be something that made you think about something that day. That could be latency. Flying, for example, is a sign that you feel successful. And falling means, according to Freud, that you feel like you're failing in some way. All right? So those are just some examples. So it'd be interesting to see what you produce with your dreams. Does anybody have anything that they want to share or add to what we talked about today?
With the losing teeth thing, could it also be a sign of stress?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you're feeling judged, yeah, that could put some stress on you. Okay, absolutely.
I feel like my dreams are sometimes like the stuff I just push in the back of my head that I don't really want to think about during like the day.
Right. And now we kind of talked about that. Remember with the subconscious, right? So whatever we're trying to stuff down and not deal with that day may tend to bubble up in either our behaviors or our thoughts while we're awake, or while we're sleeping, they might manifest as dreams, right? So Pretty cool stuff. Did y'all like this? Was this
Yeah, it was very interesting.
Yeah, it was
okay?
cool.
All right. All right. Awesome.
Did they say anything about? Did they say anything about like? Did he say anything about fighting? Cause like I had dreamed a lot about like fighting, whether it's a person. Like the other day, I had a dream about fighting like a giant alligator or something like that.
A giant alligator. Okay. And again, we talked about things with teeth might be an indication of predator. So you might feel like something is trying to come at your career or something like that. So you know, we could probably do this all day. I know a lot of you have questions as to what your dreams are. But again, this exercise this week, this is just kind of an exercise to you know, get you to start thinking about these dreams. I do a lot of work with veterans and people that have PTSD and develop fears of going to sleep because of the nightmares and night terrors that they have. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about the difference between what nightmares and night terrors are later. But one of the things I work with them on is not fearing those dreams and trying to work with those dreams to kind of see what they mean and get them curious about what's happening with them. Because when they start taking that power away from those nightmares, they find that they have a lot more respect for themselves and their curiosities, which is very therapeutic and very cathartic. And again, I'll talk more about sleep disorders and night terrors and nightmares on Friday. Okay. All right. Any other questions? Any other comments? All right. I will go ahead.
Can I just talk to you after class for a second?
Absolutely. Yep. I was just going to say I'm going to stick around for a few minutes here. So if anybody needs to speak with me one-on-one, go ahead and stick by. Otherwise, have a great day. I'll see all of you on Friday.
Have a good one.